What's up, Fathom Church, and welcome to the Going Deeper podcast. This is your host, Kyle Knight, and I am here with our missions minister, Karina Bost. Hi, Karina.
Hello.
And lead pastor, Chris Martin. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Kyle.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, I'm glad you are both here today.
In my office.
In your office. Really excited about today. We're talking about gambling. We've kind of hinted at this the last few weeks as I think it was like last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about, we did our politics podcast and
the Fathom Voters Guide.
Fathom Voters Guide. Hopefully you listen to that and
hope you voted.
But there was even some stuff in there that we kind of hinted at this, but we're going to record a full episode on gambling. And Chris, you just mentioned this before we hit record, but why should we do a podcast about gambling? Like, what is it about gambling now that is kind of, I don't know, just kind of more accessible and just out there that we as Christians need to talk about it?
Well, I was watching the Denver Broncos as I normally do on a Sunday. And if you watched any sports in the last, let's say 2 years, you've probably noticed the same thing that I noticed, which is an inordinate amount of commercials dealing with sports betting online through apps. So you got, DraftKings and you've got MGM, this or that. I mean, there's just a lot of this stuff out there. And I just did like cursory searches on the internet about like where gambling addiction is and kind of how things are going. And it's a huge industry. I mean, gambling was before, but now that you can carry a casino in your pocket, it's a different game. Like it's a different world now. And so there's a lot of people who I think are negatively being affected by the issue of gambling, because it used to be, well, do you go to Vegas or do you go to Black Hawk or do you go to Reno and do you, Cripple Creek and hit the slots once a year with your buddies? Like that is a different narrative than what we're having today when it comes to sports betting and things like that. So I just thought, hey, we should probably talk about this because I'm imagining that people are getting at least visually assaulted with these ads. And then I also have read, and I didn't bring any of the statistics, so I apologize if I'm just making all this stuff up, but I know specifically the target of young men is a huge one for this sports betting app thing. And I just know guys who are in it. I mean, in it at a level where it makes me even feel like, should you be putting that much money into this little app, trying to, meet your parlays and, all this. I mean, it's just a lot. There's just a lot there. Yeah. So that was kind of the genesis of this. But I do think the larger question of should Christians gamble is one that, people in faith communities have been struggling with and working through for a long time.
Yeah. So before we get to that question and what is gambling, right or wrong? Is it a sin or not? Karina, do you have any experience with gambling?
Are you a gambler?
Am I a gambler?
Do you have some sportsbook apps on your?
Oh yeah,
phone?
I mean,
you're a big DraftKings player.
That's right. I mean, I do love me some fantasy football, but no money is involved.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm on a cruise ship. We go cruising, and that's the only time I've ever been in a casino.
Okay.
There you go.
That's your extent.
That's my gambling background. Actually, I should take that back. Poker nights, those kind of things are very popular in youth sport fundraisers.
Yeah, they are.
So I have also, because my boys,
casino night or poker night.
Yeah. So we have participated in some of those fundraiser activities.
Yep. Okay. I mean, I'm shocked. I mean, just aghast with this
upcoming casino night here at Fathom Church.
Yeah, that's interesting.
For me, I have probably rarely gambled, if anything. I think along the lines with Karina, it's sports stuff for me, and it's fantasy football. But like I love sports. I'm in a fantasy football league, and we put a little cash up front in, and that's it every year, and that's the only thing I do. I have never gambled in a casino before, and I'm fine with that. Just nothing interests me. In college we played poker a lot, but would never play for anything. So,
Okay.
so yeah, we don't have. I don't have that itch really, but the sports thing is totally like,
Yeah.
That's a thing, and you're right. Watching it now, it's even like during the games where you see like the over under, like all this, like all the lines and everything like that. It's always talked about, and so it really is everywhere. A lot of my friends do it, and a lot of my friends do the app stuff, and a lot more than me. And I just don't even like. They're all in all the DraftKings stuff. They're always chatting about it on our group text, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I just have never really gotten into it.
Yeah, I've never done the online sports betting things like that. I have gone to casinos. Like I've gone.
Wow.
Confession time. Yeah. Don't be shocked.
Don't be shocked.
Yeah. So
Reno.
So literally, I used to go to an annual conference in Reno and stay in a casino because that's the only clean hotel in the entire state of Nevada, pretty much. But yeah, I would do it again. Just throw this out there. So I guess cards are on the table that I don't think that gambling is always a sin for a Christian, but I think what I would do is I would go to Reno and I would, set a limit of this is my entertainment dollars, right? Mm-hmm. So it's $50 or it's $100 or whatever the amount is. I'm going to spend this not going and seeing a show, not going to see a concert, not, eating out. I'm going to use this money for, playing blackjack or, whatever it might be. And it was actually at a casino that I realized, oh, this is why this is so dangerous. Because I was sitting at a blackjack table. And if you've been to a casino, you know that this is how they work. The lights, there's no windows in casinos intentionally. They don't want you to know whether it's day or night. It's always like 7 p.m. at a casino because it's always just kind of dim, just dark enough, but not so dark that you think I should go to bed. But it's also always dark in there. And then there are ATMs everywhere. ATMs everywhere. And the goal is for you to spend your money, really think that this is fun and that you could win it back, go to the ATM and get a little bit more, get a little bit more, get a little bit more. And when I realized, I don't have a propensity towards like a gambling issue, but I was at a table playing blackjack and a probably 21, 22, 23-year-old kid shows up and sits down next to me. And he's looking a little scruffy, just doesn't look like he's staying at the casino. Just kind of looks like he came in off of the street, and he, puts a couple $100 and gets some chips, and we're starting to play blackjack. And I notice him just like shaking, like his hands are shaking, like he's nervous or something. And I'm like, "Are you okay, man?" He says, "Yeah, I just got to make rent." And I realized, oh, there are different levels of involvement with this form of entertainment that can be very dangerous. So that's the other piece from my personal experience. Now, I don't know how that goes when it's on a phone and you can be like in your house by yourself and it's connected to your bank account and you can just start throwing hundreds, thousands of dollars into this stuff. If you've got, this is why every single commercial has if you've got a problem, call 1-800, like the big long gambling is something that is very addictive. So you got to be real careful, if anything. So I think that's my personal experience with it. I think there is a way to do it that's right and that's okay and that's fun. But it's also, it's playing with a firearm at some level. It can be very destructive. It can be really fun and enjoyable, but it can also, blow a foot off.
Yeah. So let's kind of start there. I have in my notes, I'd love to hear some like arguments for gambling, and maybe for gambling as in like why it's okay for maybe a Christian to partake in, and maybe some arguments against gambling. So Karina, do you want to start with one or the other, and then we'll go from there?
Okay. What I don't have anything for, not that I'm against it.
There you go. Let's go against.
So I'm gonna go.
You take against. I'll take the for stand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Clearly, I've been gambling, so I not. Anyways,
You're gambling that this is going to
that's
turn
right.
out well.
That's right. I think the Bible clearly warns us against what God has given us, our resources, and to steward them well. And so stewardship of our resources is a big one, but also the bigger issue that addresses gambling, I think, is just the love of money. I mean, the Bible from cover to cover, verses about greed and about don't love money. And, even in Proverbs, like it even addresses get rich quick schemes in Proverbs a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there isn't a verse that says, thou shalt not gamble. And so we can't just say, it's not like hey, this is a clear issue in the Bible. We can clearly see, it's the same as don't lie. That's not the case here.
Right.
But we can use some of the verses, some of the themes that run throughout the Bible to give us wisdom in how we approach gambling.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, I think you're hitting those points right. Stewardship is a big reason. Should we gamble? Maybe can we is not the question. Should we? If God has given us resources, should we use these resources for that? I think that's a good question to ask. Are you trying to get rich? Like, what's your motive? That matters, because I think you're absolutely right. The Proverbs speak really clearly about hard work, about perseverance, about not frivolous, about not lending and borrowing, and like there's a whole bunch of stuff in the Proverbs that tells you how to wisely manage your resources. And then, I think the other piece on the against argument is the addictive piece. And it's just a risky endeavor. This is not like every other form of entertainment. I mean, maybe you could argue that, but like going to see a movie is not as addictive. There's not the same dopamine hits that you're getting from gambling. So I think that's right. The other side, though,
can I throw something in there?
Yeah, you want to throw one? Yeah. Throw it.
I think one other thing that it kind of does, it always makes me when I think of gambling, it always makes me think of this, the luck aspect, the fate aspect, the just kind of that gambling piece of it. Everything's like you're kind of throwing out money for like chance and just kind of hoping, that kind of stuff. I think it almost undermines the sovereignty of God, of like God's sovereignty of being powerful and having authority, and then to just kind of put the resources that God has given you that we should be stewarding very well, and having wisdom over these sorts of things, and kind of putting it to chance and to luck, and just being like, wherever the cards fall, like I'm praying and hoping that I'm getting this certain number. I think there's a lot of that we're kind of looking at God and going, I think this chance, this luck can give me a better situation in life or whatever.
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of like, I mean, it's shrouded in superstition. It's shrouded, it's right. Like blow on the dice to, for luck, is Lady Luck with you? Like there's a lot of kind of weird, like subculture superstition that actually is kind of pagan in a lot of its roots. So I think that's a big part of that too, Kyle. There's also different like aspects to gambling that I think you just have to ask. Like there are some that it's pure luck. It's like you put a coin in the slot machine, you pull the bar, and it says you get cherries or you don't. I've never done slots, so I don't even know how. There's no coins and there's no levers now. It's just like scan your phone and push a button. I'm sure that's how it works now. Take my money from me, please, as fast as you can. And then there are games where you're trying to play. There's strategy. There's an element of luck, but there's also like some strategy. So there's different gradients of this. Betting on sports versus betting on maybe a horse race versus betting on like a fantasy football thing. I don't think it's an easy sweeping argument to just say gambling, forever is wrong. But I do think you guys are bringing up really important pieces. The for argument is show me the verse.
Yep.
Let's not add to God's word, right? So is this a law in the Bible prohibiting gambling? I don't see one. Is this a wisdom issue? I believe absolutely. So just like we've talked about for the last 2 years as we've been doing this
Yeah.
podcast, there are a lot of matters of conscience here. So there's a matter of conscience and a matter of wisdom that needs to be played out here.
Yeah.
There's also the aspect of community that
Mhm.
kind of plays into this. So yeah, a fantasy football league with a, a $50 buy-in or something like that can be a really fun way to
Mhm.
connect with neighbors and friends and college buddies. And like, I mean, so there's a community aspect to it where you're like, there's a fundraising kind of, how can we be a part of the world, in the world, but not of the world?
Mhm.
You can do that by going to poker night with, the neighbors or with the basketball or football team. And so I do think that there's other ways that we can push in favor of it in a reasonable way, like in a restrained, self-controlled, measured way, to say, maybe this could be fun. Maybe this could be okay. Maybe this could be a part of a communal event. And those would be some of the perhaps pros, if you were, of the idea of gambling.
Yeah. I think those are really good. So and honestly, one of my kind of pros, I guess, for that is, and we've talked a little bit about it, is that entertainment purpose of just, I think it comes down to motives, really, about if you are, if you're struggling or if you're addicted to it and you're just trying to get rich, that greed comes into that. But there's some entertainment in it. Like with me playing my fantasy football, it's just like, it literally is, it's fun and entertaining, and it's not an addictive thing, and it's not a constant like keep putting in money every single week or whatever. So as we're kind of talking about like certain types of gambling, I guess one of the questions we had from before this was, is the stock market gambling? I mean, that's just a question we could talk about. Like, is playing the stock market gambling? Karina, what do you think?
Wow, that was a question out of left field. I think for some people it can be. I think some people go all in, they stalk the stock market, and they obsess over it and going in and pulling out at the right time, all those things. So I think for some people, sure, it could be a problem in their lives. I think that's all I'm going to say.
Well, I mean, you saw this a couple years ago with the app Robinhood. Remember that app that it was in the news for a minute, where essentially it was real small ball day trading for a consumer. You don't have to be a stockbroker. You, through this third-party app, I want to buy this stock, and then I want to sell it, and I want to try and double my money. And it's kind of on a low scale, not from an investment standpoint. Investments are long-term things. This is more of a day trade thing. And I would say, yeah, absolutely. You're gambling. You're gambling. Now, granted, there are well-trained financial advisors who sometimes weigh the risks and the benefits of how our investment structure works in the United States and the world at large. I mean, we talk about compounding interest as like a wise move for your retirement and, investing. You're still you could lose it, but there's very low risk investments. Right. There are higher risk investments. How do you diversify? I mean, there's a lot of pieces that go into that. So I do think that there are probably, and I know stories of people who have legitimately lost it all day trading. I mean, essentially gambling on the stock market. There's a difference, I think, between doing that and being a responsible, financial investor.
Right.
But some of that is, you're loaning money to organizations hoping to get a return on that money at a higher rate. I mean, that's some dangerous gambling. Yeah.
And I think to some extent you can take your money out of things. Whereas if you're like playing a card game or something, if you're playing blackjack and you see a card and you're like, I don't like that, you can't take your money back. Your money's in there and you're just risking it. It's about risk. But yeah, again, I think it comes down to motive, and I think it comes down to being wise. If you're in there all the time, if it becomes obsessive and you're putting all your money in there and you're just trying to get rich, it's probably not the best thing for you. So I think again, it's a wisdom thing of just.
Let's talk about that word that you used, obsession.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that when it comes to fantasy football. Let's move away from like stocks, and let's move away from like playing the casinos on vacation. Let's move into, because we live in Colorado. Now, listen, somebody could drive up every weekend to Blackhawk, and that we would say, okay, you got a problem. But let's talk more realistically about our phones and our fantasy football, and like what I would assume is a more relevant expression of gambling that people are tempted to. And I like that word obsession, Kyle, because, you know, an obsession is just a kind of a cleaner way of talking about an addiction, right? So how do you know if you're addicted to fantasy football, to sports betting? Like, how do you know when it moves from fun to I need to get rid of this? What do you guys think on that? Like, where does that? How do we discern those things wisely as people?
Yeah, I think if it's ever in a point where like you refuse to sit a weekend out, oh, I have to put my bets in for this weekend. Or if you do and you're watching the game and you get infuriated with yourself because you did it and you're like, I would have bet that. That would have been a lot of money. Like if you just find yourself constantly viewing, let's just say it is sports betting, you're viewing sports through how you can make money or how you could have made money or lost, like whatever. I think that might be an indication that you have an obsession. You just can't sit down and watch the game and enjoy it for the game that it is.
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of along those lines too. Is I love sports. I love watching it. I have like the fantasy football app on my phone that I'll check once a week, maybe twice a week. But I think for me, it's if it starts to affect every other part of my life, if it starts to affect my attitude. Like if I'm watching a game and I have some fantasy players on that team and I'm like, come on, let's go. And they don't do that well. And that ruins my entire day and weekend and week because I'm so angry that I lost my game. Like that's a problem. I don't have that problem because my team's awful always, but it really is like if I am neglecting time with my wife or my kids and focusing so much on games or an app on my phone or whatever that is, and it changes my attitude, my emotions, like it affects me in that sense, then I would be like, this is too much. This is going above and beyond. It's not entertaining anymore. It's taking priority over other things in my life. If I'm on that app more than the Bible app or more than anything else, then it's like, okay, there's probably some kind of issue there. So for me, it's like, if it affects how I am with other people in my life, or it affects my whole week or something like that, then it's an issue.
Yeah. I'm trying to think through how regular gambling fits into Christ likeness. Like I'm looking at my board and what I'm preaching on this coming Sunday, and I'm thinking like, is there a way to pursue godliness with like seek ye first the kingdom of God, like, and its benefits? Like if we are called to be, if we're called to be obsessed with Christ and Christ likeness and the mission of God, is there room for regular gambling? I don't want to make a sweeping rule just because I don't want to, like I said last week in my sermon, I don't want legalism. I don't want to add to God's law. Right. I don't want to heap anything onto somebody, but I would very much check. This isn't just gambling. This is everything. But like, is this making me more Christ-like or not? And I don't know. I mean, maybe like, because entertainment does have to fit in there, but it's not like, even if I keep using going to the movies because your husband and I go to the movies, but it's not like we go to the movies 3 times a week. We'll go to the movie, every couple months. We go to hang out and grab lunch and go to a movie together. I just wonder where obsession pulls you away from Christ as opposed to stirs up your heart for Christ.
And I don't think you could even just put like a monetary value. Like,
right.
I mean, I guess there's wisdom in your budget when you budget monthly or yearly, whatever. Hey, this is our entertainment budget.
Right, for sure.
And then if that depletes your entertainment budget to that extent, but I still don't think there's like a dollar amount you could put on. This is too much. Like
again, like, and I said at the beginning, like, if I go to Reno, I'll bring $100 and I'll go play blackjack. Like, I think that's fun. If I lived in Reno, it wouldn't be like hey, Saturday night blackjack time. I go every week. I think there's a difference there in terms of a one-off or a very infrequent, hey, this is a fun thing I like to do every once in a while. And I do this every week.
Right.
Kind of what you're saying, like, I can't miss a week. Or no, this is just part of my rhythms. This is who I am. Like, I'm finding some sort of ongoing. I mean, but then someone might push back and say, well, what about watching the Broncos? Like, are you obsessed with that? It's like, gosh, I don't know. Right. Like, I probably need to think about that a little bit.
Yeah. I think this all comes back to it's wisdom issues for like all these things. A lot of our topics of discussion on this podcast are things that we really need to take a look at in our own lives and say, is this taking priority over Jesus in your life? Like, and I get like, I'm on the side of, if gambling's like, if your motive is just entertainment, like it's just fun and then you can like turn it off, then it's fine. But anything like that, anything that's like little or small or like, it's just this now, it's just this, could become something more, could snowball, could still, when you say like, is this getting in the way of you and Jesus? Is this becoming a priority over Jesus? Is this honoring God with everything that you do? Even if it's just a little thing, watching the Bronco game, you're like, well, I don't think I'm honoring God, but I'm not doing anything wrong, I don't think. But it's things to really think about and to think about before they do get worse or get to a place where you are obsessed or addicted.
It could get out of hand really quick. I mean, I
especially this topic can get out of hand really quick.
Can get out of, and I know that it's as well. I just think we have to say it. It's as dangerous as alcohol. It's as dangerous. It's an intoxicating thing. It is not neutral. I mean, all of the neuroscience points to this actually does something to your brain that causes you to crave it and want it more. It's not net negative or not net zero. It's actually a net negative. So you got to be really, really cautious what you're playing with. There are, I would say it this way, there are certainly obsessions that are less dangerous, and there are obsessions that are more dangerous. And this is one of the more dangerous ones. And so, man, exercise real caution and wisdom. Let me ask this. Maybe we close up with this idea. We got a lot of young men and women in our church. You know, average age is mid 30s probably at our church now. So if this seems to be targeting and disproportionate for young men, what do we say to some of our young men who either are currently doing some of these sport books things and or to our young women who are, I mean, I just hear from young women, young single women who are like, I'm looking for a godly man. Like what do we, how does this play into the character formation of young men specifically? And I'm sure it plays out differently for gals than it does for guys, but let's just talk to our younger people at our church about this. What does it say about character?
Well, I would say this topic, gambling, like other ones, could very easily be something that kind of gets pushed below the surface that like nobody really sees. This could very easily be something, again, because it's all on our phones, it's at the ready, it's through sports betting, through other kind of betting, through things like that. I think this could be one of those things that, like as a young guy, I'm young. mid-30s ish. You said mid-30s. This could be one of those easy things that can become a problem, that can become sin in your life, that you don't want to talk about, that you don't show it, that you don't even like, you don't let people in that are closest to you, that your spouse might not know.
It could be hidden
what
for
you're
sure.
doing. It could be hidden for sure. And yeah, it's not like a pornography thing or anything like that, but it can be something that's hidden. And that, again, is not like that. That's not good. I think of when you were asking that, one of the kind of last questions that we had was like, what if somebody has an issue with this? Or like, what do you do if you have a gambling problem or a gambling addiction, that kind of stuff. And I think of like guys who are so into this and who are young and maybe married, but like keep this from their spouse or whatever. I just think, I think this needs to be something that's talked about. I think this needs to be like, if you're out there and you're, and you don't think you have an issue, but you do this a lot. I just think guys especially need to talk about it more and say like, hey, let me just run this by you. Is this something that I should be worried about? Am I doing this too much? I think guys need to talk about that more and, bounce things off of each other and say like, hey, what do you think about this? But yeah, I do think this can be something that's very easily hidden, that can become a problem for whether it's with your spouse or with your friends or a small group or whatever like that, that it's like, these are things that need to be talked about. If you're involved in this and if you're doing this a lot, this might need to be an accountability thing of like bringing it up with somebody, seeing if you need help with this, talking to your spouse about it. Like, again, this can be a very slippery slope of like losing all your finances. And it's
secrets are almost always an indication that something's really wrong.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. I totally agree. If you feel like, hey, I'm doing this and nobody knows and I don't want anybody to know,
right.
That better be a red flag in your face right now to say it's time to talk to somebody about it. Yeah. What do you think, Karina?
I think my advice would be, if you're in doubt, you probably should stop. Like if you're like sitting there, I don't maybe that's a problem. Maybe it's not. I don't know. There is no harm in stopping. Like it is using wisdom, but if it's just like, maybe this is getting carried away, like stop and get to a point where you can do it just twice a year for entertainment with your friends. Or, maybe you're realizing this is not something you can do just casually and for like with friends to hang out. And yeah,
that's good.
I think this is one of those topics. It's better to err on the side of caution than like, no, I'm fine. This isn't a problem.
And honestly, I really, when I think about this topic of gambling, I do think there's a lot of like young guys out there that compare this and say, well, it's not as bad as if I had a pornography addiction. I'm not going to a strip club. I'm not hiding that kind of stuff. It's gambling. Like I'm pressing a few, but I'm not looking at anything bad. I'm pressing a few buttons to bet on a sports team. And then I just do it again. I just don't tell my wife about it. We have separate bank accounts, it's still an issue. And I think some guys don't think it is and don't think it's that big of a problem. And so, I'm with Karina. Like if you're in doubt, if you have questions about it, you got to talk to somebody.
Yep. Love it.
But also I just think too, it's not a source of income. Gambling should never be considered a source of income. Or like, hey, I'm just trying to make a couple bucks. Like that is not what gambling is for.
No,
just trying to win the lottery.
That's insane.
I want to win the lottery.
Yeah. If we're talking red flags, that's a red flag.
What do you do? I play the lottery every
professional. I mean, there's professional gamblers. Yeah.
Well, that is true.
Which again, I'd say is there's a lot of professions that Christians probably shouldn't do. And that might be one of them.
So Chris, last words from our pastor. If anybody's like really struggling with something like gambling, what are your kind of?
Yeah. I mean, I think first thing first is tell somebody. Tell your husband or your wife, tell your D group leader or shepherding elder or a family member, a mom or a dad. I mean, tell somebody who's Christ-centered, who is going to help you with it, walk with you in it. If you're actually addicted to it, you're probably going to need some real like intervention. I mean, it's not as easy as, well, I'm just going to delete the app. I mean, it's an addictive thing. You need to unwire your brain from that. It has the same effect as alcohol on you. So, so yeah, we're here for you. We'd love to walk with you in that if that's something that's going on. But yeah, you can't keep it in the dark. You're not going to win it on your own. So.
Awesome. Hey, thank you both for this conversation. This was a good one. Thank you, church, for listening, and we'll catch you next time.